Most people have no clue what real intelligence looks like, but you're about to. And the best place to start is the framework almost everyone has heard of, but hardly anyone actually understands: IQ levels. Love it or hate it, the intelligence quotient is still the world's most commonly used rating of cognitive ability, even though it's only one part of the full picture. So before we get into the other ways intelligence shows up, let's break down what these levels actually mean. Extremely low intelligence. IQ less than 70. Can you imagine what life might look like when everyday tasks feel like solving a puzzle with no picture on the box? That's the reality here. This level often stems from conditions like Down syndrome, traumatic brain injury, or complications during development. Everyday routines, brushing teeth, making breakfast, or finding the right bus stop rarely run on autopilot. These individuals need steady support and consistent structure to make life manageable. But it's not just about limitations. Emotional awareness can be surprisingly strong. Many people here sense kindness, frustration, or fear long before words explain it. They form deep bonds, express joy and sadness openly, and often connect in ways that feel profoundly genuine. Independence may not be possible, but meaning absolutely is. With support, patience, and love, individuals at this level can live lives filled with connection, laughter, and dignity. Hollywood sometimes romanticizes this range, as if everyone secretly hides untapped genius, but that's not reality. It's more of a sidekick level of intelligence, not flying solo, but bringing heart, humor, and humanity to the story. Borderline intelligence, IQ 70 to 79. This is the edge of independence, the "I can do it, just show me again" zone. People here can live on their own and handle routines, but complex reasoning and abstract ideas often trip them up. School is usually tough for them. Math, science, and grammar may all feel like a foreign language, but give them repetition or hands-on practice, and it all starts to click. They thrive in structure, clear steps, steady schedules, predictable tasks. You'll often find them in jobs like greeting customers, stocking shelves, or running a register with straightforward instructions. But multitasking, handling complicated customer problems, or juggling surprises, that's where things get shaky. Socially, many are outgoing, loyal, and emotionally intuitive. They might not dive into philosophy debates, but they'll notice your bad mood and find a way to make you laugh. About 6 to 7% of the population falls into this range, more common than most people realize. When they're respected for what they can do rather than judged for what they can't, they build full lives, raise families, and contribute in ways that really matter. Low average intelligence, IQ 80 to 89. This is the zone where things mostly work but rarely feel easy. People in the low average range tend to function independently, but day-to-day life often takes more effort than it does for others. In school, they probably didn't get pulled aside for special help, but they weren't winning spelling bees either. For some, that in-between space comes from undiagnosed learning disorders like dyslexia or dyscalculia. Given the right support or accommodations, they might jump up to the average range, but without it, they're left struggling just to keep pace. It's not that they lack intelligence, their brains just process information differently. They live alone, hold jobs, and pay rent. You'll often find them in roles like delivery, office support, food service, or trades. Jobs that call for responsibility and routine, but can feel overwhelming when things change suddenly. Socially, they look no different than their peers. They make friends, date, and joke around just like everyone else. On the surface, no one notices their struggle, but inside, there can be quiet confusion, mental fatigue, and the constant pressure of trying to keep up. Average intelligence, IQ 90 to 109. Statistically, this is the middle of the bell curve, literally average. 50% of the population lands right here, and yet nearly everyone you meet is convinced they're smarter than this. If you're one of the ones thinking, "I'm definitely above average," well, the math probably says otherwise. Most school principals are here, most accountants are here, and people who wander straight down the middle of the parking lot aisle while you're waiting to park behind them are usually here too. People in the average range are capable, competent, and independent. They do their taxes, eventually, hold down jobs, pay bills, and manage day-to-day life just fine. They raise families, keep friendships, and carry on conversations every bit as well as anyone else. Some might think being a history buff or having a big vocabulary makes them above average. But IQ is more than just facts. It includes comprehension, spatial awareness, memory, and the speed at which you process information. So sure, everyone might want you on their team for trivia night, but ask you to parallel park or navigate without GPS, and suddenly no one wants to ride in your car. High average intelligence, IQ 110 to 119. You might think that intelligence jumps from average straight to genius, but there are several levels in between. High average is the go-to range, the person you ask to check your work, run the meeting, or organize the office retreat. Sharp, steady, dependable. They don't just get things done, they get them done right. Back in school, this group often landed near the top of the class. Not always the star, but didn't really struggle. As adults, many move into roles that reward dedication and good judgment, upper management, project coordination, finance, or technical fields where accuracy matters. Roughly 17% of the population falls in this range. They carry the group project and silently correct your grammar. And yes, this group includes the friend who watches a documentary on volcanoes and won't shut up about it for a week. Superior intelligence, IQ 120 to 129. Here, thinking starts to speed up. People at this level draw associations almost instantly and notice patterns long before anyone else does. That speed has a cost. Emotionally, people in this range may feel out of sync, especially when they're young and their mental processing outpaces their social or emotional development. Conversations can feel too slow, classmates too shallow, and friendships harder to sustain. It's not arrogance, it's pacing. As adults, that sharpness often finds a home in careers that thrive on foresight and strategy. They make strong analysts, engineers, attorneys, or scientists. The people who can hold complex moving parts in their head and still see what's missing. Not quite genius, but might as well be. The challenge here is learning not just to be right, but to stay connected. To be patient and listen instead of correct. Very superior intelligence. IQ 130 to 144. This is the range that's technically known as gifted. People here don't just finish the group project, they restructure it for efficiency and correct the teacher's math error along the way. Abstract reasoning comes easily, and new skills settle in after only a few tries. Socially and emotionally, things can get complicated. As kids, some were labeled intense, awkward, or simply too much. A small subset may show traits that overlap with high-functioning autism, formerly Asperger's, though high intelligence and neurodivergence are not the same thing. As adults, they often find themselves in roles like surgeons, constitutional lawyers, or astrophysicists, places where depth of thought and precision matter more than small talk. The same intellectual intensity that serves them professionally can interfere with their ability to interact socially. What starts out as a normal conversation can suddenly veer into weird things like quantum physics, algorithmic logic, or time travel paradoxes. Less than 2% of the population falls into this category. Smart enough to make you question your own existence, but odd enough to ramble on about wormholes while you're just trying to eat your sandwich. Exceptionally gifted, IQ 140 to 159. This is the range formerly known as genius. Minds here don't just learn quickly, they leap light years ahead. From an early age, you could spot them. They weren't just taking machines apart, they were rebuilding them better than before. While other kids were still learning to tie their shoes, these kids were teaching themselves entire subjects, composing music, or writing code. For them, problems weren't puzzles to solve, they were opportunities to rewrite the rules. That kind of originality carries into adulthood. You'll find them founding major companies, pushing the frontiers of medicine or science, or inventing technologies that profoundly affect the world. Think of people like Elon Musk, Marie Curie, or Steve Jobs. Minds that not only advance their fields, but change the direction of history. But brilliance has its drawbacks. Their minds can race so far ahead that ordinary routines feel impossible, and they sometimes get sidetracked by the trivial, like spending an hour redesigning a to-do list instead of crossing anything off it. Only about 0.1% of people fall into this range. It's a rare club, where genius doesn't just exist, it leaves a mark. Profound genius, IQ 160 plus. The highest of IQs, the rarest of rare. Standardized tests don't even reach this far. Most top out around 160, so beyond that, we're in uncharted territory. This is the realm of minds that don't just think outside the box. They repurpose the box, patent it, and publish a groundbreaking theory while you're still peeling off the shipping label. Think Einstein-level genius, a man who unlocked secrets of the universe but never quite mastered brushing his own hair. People in this range can do in days what might take the rest of civilization decades, spotting hidden laws of nature or connecting ideas across disciplines to create entirely new sciences. What sets them apart is the ability to imagine possibilities the rest of us can't, like Newton inventing calculus because math didn't go far enough. Da Vinci sketching helicopters centuries before engines existed. Ramanujan filling notebooks with formulas that took mathematicians generations to decipher. Lovelace dreaming up the first algorithm before computers were even possible. Their brilliance is often so far ahead of its time that it's misunderstood, dismissed, or mistaken for madness. 0.003% of the population, fewer than 1 in 30,000 people fall into this range. They are the polymaths, the visionaries, the rare few whose thinking doesn't just add to human knowledge, it bends the trajectory of civilization itself. Now that you've seen where people fall on the intelligence scale, it's worth remembering that IQ is only one piece of the puzzle. Some people are brilliant with logic, some with language, some with movement, some with people. Intelligence comes in completely different forms. So next, let's break down the different types of intelligence and what they look like. Linguistic intelligence. Give someone with linguistic intelligence a room, a microphone, and 5 minutes, and they can make you laugh, cry, or sign a petition you didn't think you agreed with. This is the kind of mind that runs on language, quick with metaphors, sharp with comebacks, and lethal in a debate. Think of lawyers dismantling arguments, comedians twisting words into punchlines, or teachers who can turn a boring chapter into something you actually remember. It's not just knowing big words, it's the ability to use them like precision tools. A brilliant communicator can inspire revolutions. They can also sell you garbage with a smile. Linguistic intelligence is the ability to use words so well they don't just describe reality, they help determine it. Logical, mathematical intelligence. Ever met someone who treats life like one long math problem? They're the ones who calculate the tip before the check lands, clean up at blackjack because they've figured the odds, or choose a vacation spot because the exchange rate is favorable, not because they actually want to go there. That's logical, mathematical intelligence, the brain's ability to break problems into steps and see patterns the rest of us miss. It's more than just school math, it's the engine behind science and technology. It connects cause to effect, challenges assumptions, and follows the chain of reasoning all the way to a solid conclusion. It's how researchers test theories, how programmers track down bugs hidden in thousands of lines of code, and how engineers make sure a bridge holds. While other kinds of intelligence can persuade, imagine, or inspire, logical mathematical intelligence actually demonstrates. Every skyscraper, every vaccine, every app on your phone depends on this kind of thinking. It gives you the kind of answer that doesn't just sound right, it is. Visual spatial intelligence. Parallel parking on the first try isn't luck, it's geometry. If you can picture the path your car will follow, anticipate the space it will occupy against the curb, and then steer to match that image, you're using visual spatial intelligence. This is a fundamental form of human intelligence, the ability to think in space. It's how you mentally manipulate shapes, distances, and orientations. You see it when someone guides a couch through a stairwell at exactly the right angle, packs a trunk like a puzzle without planning, or reads a map without rotating the page to match their direction. The same intelligence powers surgeons who navigate instruments through 3D anatomy and animators who spin ideas into vivid worlds. It's also the artist who imagines a sculpture before carving the stone, and an athlete who anticipates exactly where the ball will land. While some people rely on trial and error or verbal instructions, those with strong visual spatial intelligence run the simulation in their head and know the answer before they move. If you're still doing a 10-point turn to park, well, now you know which type of intelligence to blame. Bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Ever wonder how a gymnast knows exactly where the ground is while flipping blindly through the air? Or how a basketball player can adjust a shot mid-jump without looking at their hands? That's bodily kinesthetic intelligence at work, the mind using the body as its instrument. It's the ability to sense where every limb is, how fast it's moving, and what adjustment will stick the landing. Athletes use it to control balance and momentum, dancers to turn movement into rhythm, and dentists to perform delicate procedures that demand unwavering fine motor control. For some people, intelligence shows itself as words on paper. For others, it shows up in motion, in the perfect golf swing, the chef slicing at lightning speed, or the steady hand guiding a needle through fabric. Just goes to show that intelligence isn't only in your head. Sometimes it's in your body. Musical intelligence. Play a song once for most people, they might hum it later. Play it once for someone with musical intelligence, they'll sit down and reproduce the whole thing note for note, melody, harmony, chords, and bass line included. The auditory cortex in people with musical intelligence processes sound with the precision others use for language or math. They don't just enjoy music, they decode it. Like a kid who figures out how to play an instrument without a single lesson, a composer who hears an entire symphony before writing a note, or even a mechanic who can diagnose an engine problem simply by listening. If a perfectly timed chord gives you chills, if you can match pitch without effort, if you feel the exact moment a beat should drop, you may have a piece of it. For some people, music isn't something they listen to, it's how they think. Naturalist intelligence. There's a reason some people can walk into a forest and find every edible plant while you're still trying to figure out which way is north. Naturalist intelligence is pattern recognition in the living world, knowing which mushrooms will heal and which can kill you in 6 hours. Reading weather in cloud patterns, predicting when animals will move, breed, or attack. It's what kept humans alive for thousands of years before modern technology. Darwin had it, Jane Goodall had it. But so does the gardener who can tell poison ivy from a harmless vine, and the sailor who reads the horizon and knows a storm's on the way. You also see it in the dog trainer who understands instinct better than commands, and even in the cook who intuits what flavors pair well together. For most people, nature is scenery. For them, it's a conversation. They're fluent in a language the rest of us didn't know we were supposed to learn. Emotional intelligence. You walk into a meeting. Everyone's smiling. But something's off. You can't name it, but you feel it. That's emotional intelligence, better known as emotional quotient or EQ. Some people don't have it at all. They bulldoze conversations, wonder why everyone's upset, and genuinely can't see the problem. Meanwhile, others are reading expressions, adjusting tone mid-sentence, and diffusing tension before it explodes. EQ comes down to 4 things: self-awareness, self-regulation, empathy, and social skill. It's knowing why you're irritated before you snap, keeping calm when everything's burning, catching what people aren't saying out loud, and steering conflict without blowing up relationships. While people may brag about having a high IQ, EQ doesn't boast. You see it in the therapist who holds silence long enough for the real story to surface, the friend who shows up with chicken soup when you're not feeling well, and the hostage negotiator who keeps a desperate situation from turning violent by staying calm and reading the subtleties in every tone. Someone with an IQ of 150 and no EQ? Brilliant and completely alone. Because what people remember isn't your test score, it's how you made them feel. Practical intelligence. Your phone dies in a city where no one speaks English and you have no idea where you are. Some people freak out, others just handle it. Practical intelligence, otherwise known as street smarts, is solving real problems without a manual. Like the mechanic who fixes your car with duct tape and intuition, the city kid who knows which streets you don't walk down after dark, or the traveler whose flight gets canceled but manages to find their way onto the next plane. Psychologists call it tacit knowledge, the stuff you don't learn in school. Which risks to take, which people to trust, when to bargain hard, and when to keep your mouth shut. Entrepreneurs run on it. So do survivors who rely on instincts and quick judgment when there's no clear set of rules. It won't get you into Harvard, but when the power grid fails and modern conveniences vanish overnight, it might just be the only intelligence that matters. Creative intelligence. Leonardo da Vinci studied the wings of birds and turned those observations into sketches for flying machines centuries before flight was possible. Picasso, inspired by African masks and Iberian sculpture, broke with the rules of perspective and reimagined how space could be shown on canvas. Both were practicing creative intelligence, taking what already exists and transforming it into something original. It's flexibility, curiosity, and the willingness to break convention. It's holding multiple perspectives at once and questioning assumptions everyone else accepts. Marie Curie did it when she pursued the mystery of radioactivity long after her peers dismissed it, and her persistence transformed science and medicine forever. People often think creative intelligence is just about art. It isn't. It's anywhere someone refuses to accept the obvious answer and finds a new one instead. It takes what if and transforms it into what is. Interpersonal intelligence. Why do some people enter a room and everyone gravitates toward them, while others clear the space without saying a word? The answer is interpersonal intelligence. Reading people, connecting with them, and influencing behavior without force. Teachers with it know which student needs encouragement and which needs a challenge. Salespeople with it listen more than they pitch. Leaders with it build loyalty through connection, not authority. And mediators use it to bridge conflicts, finding common ground where others only see opposition. It's knowing how to read the crowd, recognizing alliances, tensions, and unspoken rules, sensing when to push and when to step back. It's the difference between leaving a conflict with a stronger relationship or walking away wondering why everyone resents you. Psychologists say it's a key part of intelligence, and in a species that survives through cooperation, that's hard to argue with. You can be brilliant in isolation, but if you can't work with people, your ideas stop with you. Intrapersonal intelligence. Most people think they know themselves well, but ask them why they keep sabotaging relationships, why they procrastinate on things that matter, and why certain situations always set them off, and they come back with nothing. Intrapersonal intelligence is brutal self-awareness, not the version of yourself you wish you were, but the one you actually are, flaws included. People with it know what triggers them, what they truly want versus what they think they should want, and why they keep repeating the same patterns. They don't just notice it, they use it to make different choices, and then act deliberately, not out of habit or impulse. You won't see it on a resume, but it's the difference between evolving and being stuck in the same loop for 30 years, wondering why nothing ever changes. Socrates said, "Know thyself." Turns out, most people never do. Crystallized intelligence. Crystallized intelligence is the storehouse of everything you've learned, the vocabulary you've built, the facts you've absorbed, the practical wisdom you've gathered over time. It's the reason someone can solve a tricky crossword, recite Shakespeare from memory, or explain how to change a tire without looking anything up. Unlike some abilities that fade with age, this one grows. Every book you read, every conversation you have, every experience you've lived through just adds to it. It's why a seasoned doctor can diagnose in 2 minutes what might take a new grad hours or days, and why a grandparent can offer life advice that just makes sense. Crystallized intelligence is the library you carry in your head, written by a lifetime of experiences, where knowledge doesn't just sit on shelves, it's checked out and used every day. Fluid intelligence. You're handed a puzzle you've never seen before. No instructions, no examples, just pieces scattered on a table. If you can spot the pattern, test a few angles, and figure it out on the fly, that's fluid intelligence at work. Unlike crystallized intelligence, which is your mental catalog of everything you've learned, fluid intelligence is reasoning in real time. It's thinking on your feet, adapting to new challenges, and solving problems when there's no ready-made answer. Psychologists measure it with abstract reasoning, spatial puzzles, and pattern recognition, tasks that reveal how quickly your brain can process the unfamiliar. With age, fluid intelligence tends to fade, while crystallized intelligence keeps expanding. You may slow down, but experience gives you more to draw from. One is speed, the other is depth, and together they help you handle life's toughest challenges. Existential intelligence. Most people think about what's for dinner. Some people think about why we eat at all, why we exist, what happens when we die, whether any of this means anything. That's existential intelligence, the capacity to raise life's biggest, most unsettling questions, and the ability to sit with the uncertainty of not knowing. You don't need to be a philosopher to have it. It shows up in anyone who pauses midlife and asks, "Is this really it?" It's in kids who look up at the stars and can't stop wondering how it all began, and in adults who keep wrestling with the same questions when there are no easy answers to be found. This kind of intelligence can weigh heavy. Too much of it and you spiral into despair, stuck on questions that don't have clear answers. But it can also fuel breakthroughs, shaping religions, inspiring revolutions, and driving discoveries that shift how entire societies see themselves. Most people move through life without really using it, but for those who do, existential intelligence leaves you with the hardest truth, the possibility that there may be no meaning at all. Savant intelligence. Kim Peek could recite 12,000 books by heart, but couldn't button his own shirt. Stephen Wiltshire draws entire cityscapes from memory after a single helicopter ride, but he struggles with everyday conversation. Daniel Tammet sees numbers as colors and shapes, which somehow lets him recite pi to over 20,000 digits. That's savant intelligence, an extraordinary talent in one very specific area, paired with significant challenges in other aspects of life. Some demonstrate near-perfect memory, word for word. Others can tell you the exact day of the week for any date in history, and some can tell you the answer to a complicated equation before most people have time to reach for their calculator. About half of savants are autistic. Many others have brain injuries or unique developmental conditions. What they all share are remarkable skills, without practice or training. Scientists think it's a kind of brain compensation. When one part of the brain is damaged or wired differently, another part becomes exceptionally powerful to compensate. It's not always a gift. Many would trade their extraordinary abilities for a more typical life. It just serves as a reminder of how intricate, complex, and still unexplained the human mind really is. Once you understand the different types of intelligence, something interesting becomes obvious. Smart minds don't always look smart. In fact, some of the habits you might assume are flaws can actually be signs of higher intelligence operating behind the scenes. Talking to yourself. Ever catch yourself talking out loud when no one's around? That's not a sign you're losing it. It's just your brain helping you out. Psychologists call it externalized metacognition, which is just the technical way of saying you're thinking out loud to think better. When you put words to your thoughts, your brain shifts into a more deliberate, organized mode of thinking, creating a kind of blueprint that helps you solve problems, remember information, and stay focused when your mind feels scattered. That's why athletes use self-talk in competition, and why children do it naturally when they're learning new skills. Even Einstein was known for mumbling to himself. So next time you catch yourself narrating your grocery list or muttering while you search for your keys, don't feel embarrassed. That's your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do. Dark humor. If you've ever laughed at a joke that made everyone else in the room uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you're twisted. It might mean your brain is unusually sharp. Understanding dark or layered humor isn't simple. Your brain has to process the literal meaning, recognize the taboo or morbid angle, and then flip it into something absurd. That quick mental gymnastics takes advanced cognitive flexibility. It's not about being heartless, it's about solving a puzzle most people can't see. Researchers have found that people who enjoy dark humor often score higher on intelligence tests and actually show less hostility overall, which means giggling at a sick punchline might make you the brightest and most level-headed person in the room. Staying up late. So you find yourself up way past midnight while everyone else is sound asleep. That doesn't necessarily mean you have bad habits. In fact, researchers have found that night owls like you often do better on creative and problem-solving tasks. Those late-night hours give your brain a quiet playground. No distractions, no interruptions. Just pure mental space to let ideas connect in ways they don't during the busy daytime. Some of the most brilliant minds in history, like Churchill, Kafka, and Tesla, were notorious for burning the midnight oil. Turns out, smart brains don't always power down when the lights go out. Sometimes they hit their stride when everyone else is dreaming. Social awkwardness. Ever had those moments when you don't know what to do with your hands, so you keep shifting them around until you're painfully aware of every movement? Or you say something in a group and the silence that follows is somehow louder than your words? Embarrassing, sure, but that awkwardness doesn't mean you're broken. It often means your brain is running faster than everything else. Smarter minds process more information. You're tracking your own words, how others might interpret them, and the possible directions the conversation could take. Sometimes you're already 10 steps ahead, focused on where things might end up, and you miss what's happening right in front of you. That forward focus throws off your timing, and you come off as the odd one out. Studies have found that socially awkward people are more likely to excel in fields that demand focus and abstract thinking: math, science, programming, creative problem solving. The same mental horsepower that makes you stumble in small talk is what helps you thrive when the work is complex. Awkward at parties, brilliant with problems. That trade-off has powered a whole lot of genius. Procrastination. You sit down to work, but somehow 3 hours disappear into scrolling, reorganizing your desk, or watching a video you didn't even care about. Then the deadline gets close, and suddenly your brain decides to show up like it's been saving all its energy for this one dramatic entrance. Procrastination feels like wasted time, but it's often the delay that sets the stage. When the deadline finally looms, pressure cuts through the noise, distractions drop away, priorities snap into place, and your brain hits a level of focus it never reaches without urgency. And when it does, it's like flipping a switch. Hours disappear, ideas link together faster than you can type them, and you churn out in minutes what felt impossible all week. Stressful, yes. But it just goes to show you how procrastination can be less about avoidance and more about timing. Being too sensitive. You know those moments when you catch a slight change in someone's tone or a hint of tension that no one else seems to notice? That's you being highly sensitive. But it's not just about noticing. It's about feeling everything more intensely. Little things that roll off other people's backs can hit you like a wave. Psychologists call this high sensory processing sensitivity, which basically means your brain is wired to take in more emotional and social information all at once. While it may mean you get overwhelmed more easily or feel like you're taking things too personally, it also indicates you have a kind of emotional intelligence that's always tuned in. You're the one who senses the subtleties, spots the patterns in how people behave, and understands the emotional layers that others miss. It's like living with the world's volume turned up higher than normal, and that's a kind of intelligence not everyone has. Questioning the norms. You see a rule, a tradition, or just the way things are done, and your brain instantly asks, why? Why does school start so early? Why do pajamas have pockets? Why do we clap our hands to show approval instead of doing literally anything else? That constant itch to question separates routine thinkers from inventive ones. Intelligent minds can't leave assumptions alone. They press, test, and tug at loose threads until the fabric shows its holes. History is full of progress that started with someone refusing to accept the obvious answer. From science to art to technology, the biggest leaps often came from people who simply wouldn't stop asking, but why? Overthinking. You fire off a simple email. Sounds good, thanks. And then spend the next hour worrying that the period at the end made you sound angry. That's overthinking in a nutshell. Your brain refuses to leave even the tiniest detail alone. The endless loop of what-if thinking is often a hallmark of a more intelligent brain. It's not just rehashing what happened. It's running mental simulations of what could happen, exploring every angle and potential outcome. That kind of mental overdrive can be exhausting, but it's also what helps you see patterns and solutions others miss. The downside? You might lose sleep over a comma. The upside, 90% of what you worry about never happens, which means worrying must work. Doodling and fidgeting. You're in a meeting, supposed to be paying attention, but your pen is busy sketching cartoon eyeballs in the margins of your notes. Or maybe your leg is bouncing like it's trying to power a small generator. Teachers used to call this not focusing. Turns out the opposite is true. Research shows doodling and fidgeting keep your brain engaged when the environment isn't stimulating enough. It's like giving your mind a side quest so it doesn't wander completely off track. Einstein twisted paper clips. Steve Jobs paced like a metronome. Your random scribbles and restless tapping? They're not proof you're distracted. They're signs your brain has surplus energy to channel. Strange obsessions. You dive into rabbit holes like you've been personally invited to the Mad Hatter's tea party. Maybe it's learning obscure facts about bands from the 80s, memorizing serial numbers on dollar bills, or mapping out conspiracy-level connections between characters in a TV show no one else even remembers. From the outside, it looks pointless, even weird. But to your brain, it's fuel. Smarter minds crave stimulation, and sometimes the usual stuff, school, work, daily life, just doesn't cut it. Unusual hobbies give your brain puzzles to chew on, systems to master, and details to obsess over until patterns emerge. That drive to dig deeper, even into something trivial, is the same force that leads scientists, inventors, and creators to world-changing ideas. People say it's eccentric. Maybe it is. It hijacks your focus, consumes hours of time, and fills your head with details no one cares to know. But every so often, you're the one with the information everyone suddenly needs. Empathy for objects. You ate the last cookie because you were afraid it would get lonely if it sat there by itself. You can't throw out old socks without feeling like you're betraying them. And you name your car Susie and tell her she'll be okay when you take her to the shop. Psychologists call this anthropomorphism, projecting human feelings onto things that absolutely don't have them. For most people, it's a passing thought, but if your brain does it constantly, it's a sign you're wired to look for connection. That tendency is tied to high emotional intelligence. You're sensitive to signals, quick to empathize, and able to imagine perspectives beyond your own. If you can picture how your pillow feels, you can also imagine how another person might feel, or dream up worlds where even the toaster has a backstory. That urge to care for cookies and comfort cars is the same one that fuels empathy, sparks creativity, and expands your imagination. Needing alone time. You like people, just not all the time. After a couple of hours of small talk, your brain feels like it needs to reboot. You crave silence the way some people crave chocolate. Sometimes that means hiding in the bathroom, pulling an Irish goodbye, or making any excuse to get back to your couch. It's not about disliking people, it's about bandwidth. Smarter brains pull in more information, more signals, more noise. Solitude gives you space to process it all, to sort patterns, connect ideas, and let your thoughts catch up with themselves. Studies suggest that people who spend time alone often show deeper focus, sharper creativity, and stronger problem-solving skills. Alone time isn't an escape from life. It's the workshop where your best ideas finally get built. If certain habits point to higher intelligence, the reverse is also true. These are the everyday behaviors psychologists link with lower intelligence that reflect gaps in reasoning, awareness, or self-control. Low situational awareness. Some habits don't require a psychology textbook to spot. You see them every day. Take people who move through the world as if no one else exists. The driver who camps in the fast lane going 10 under, oblivious to the mile-long line of cars stacking up in frustration. The ones who stop in the middle of a doorway to check their phone, forcing everyone else to shuffle awkwardly around them. And then there are the ones who carry on loud phone conversations in public like they're the star of a one-person show. On the surface, this looks like simple rudeness, but it often reflects something deeper: low situational awareness, which is the ability to notice and interpret what's happening around you. Psychologists sometimes call this social cognition. It's the mental skill that lets you read the room, recognize when you're in someone's way, or adjust your behavior to match the environment. People with weaker cognitive flexibility, the ability to shift perspective, often fail at this. They don't connect their small choices to the larger situation, which makes them seem careless, entitled, or just plain inconsiderate. Smarter minds pick up on subtle cues, anticipate how their actions affect others, and self-correct quickly. People who don't, like the ones holding full-blown phone calls in a public restroom while everyone else is just trying to keep some dignity, show they're missing a fundamental part of awareness, recognizing that the world doesn't revolve around them. Drama seeking. Life brings enough conflict on its own, yet some people seem to manufacture it wherever they go. They stir up fights in group chats, escalate minor disagreements into full-scale arguments, or retell stories in ways that fan the flames. Instead of solving problems, they multiply them, because chaos gives them attention. Psychologists link this behavior to low emotional regulation. People who can't manage their impulses or tolerate boredom often create conflict as a kind of stimulation. It's easier to light fires than to sit with quiet. Over time, this constant drama chasing erodes trust because others learn they're less interested in resolution than in performance. What often goes unnoticed is how this behavior hijacks thinking itself. When the mind is constantly occupied with conflict, there's little bandwidth left for reflection, planning, or problem solving. Drama doesn't just waste time. It crowds out the mental space intelligence depends on. Poor listening habits. We all know that person who interrupts before you finished your thought, nods along while rehearsing their reply, and asks questions that prove they weren't listening the first time. That's the hallmark of a poor listener, someone who dominates conversations, talking far more than they take in. It's not just rude, it's a sign they're running on autopilot rather than actually engaging. Cognitive scientists describe listening as an active skill. Your brain isn't just taking in words, it's decoding tone, context, and intent. That takes working memory and attention, both of which are tied closely to reasoning ability. When someone keeps cutting people off or misses key details, it often points to weak executive function, difficulty holding multiple streams of information in mind at once. When those skills break down, listening stops being a tool for clarity and turns into a source of errors. Misheard details get carried forward as if they were accurate, and decisions end up resting on shaky input. At its core, poor listening is less about bad manners and more about limited thinking. Immediate gratification. One of the clearest signs of intelligence is the ability to delay gratification, to resist a small reward now for a bigger one later. Psychologists proved this decades ago in the famous marshmallow experiment, where children were given a choice: eat one marshmallow immediately or wait 15 minutes and get two. The kids who could hold out weren't just showing patience. Later in life, they scored higher on tests and achieved more. Delayed gratification tracks directly with cognitive control. That same principle plays out in everyday life. Someone who buys the latest phone on credit, knowing they can't afford it, is showing the same lack of foresight as the child who couldn't wait. Adults just mask it with bigger stakes, draining savings for impulse purchases, eating in ways that sabotage their health, or abandoning projects as soon as the initial excitement fades. Each choice trades away the future for a fleeting reward in the present. The habit may look like simple lack of willpower, but it points to something more: an inability to think ahead. Intelligence isn't just solving puzzles or memorizing facts. It's being able to imagine the consequences of your choices. People who can't pause for that step stay locked in a cycle of chasing the immediate and paying for it later. Surface reading. Scroll through any comment section and you'll find people arguing furiously about articles they never actually read. The headline alone becomes their entire knowledge base. Nuance? Context? Buried somewhere in paragraph 3, untouched. It's like trying to review a movie after only watching the trailer. The danger is obvious. Headlines are designed to grab attention, not explain complexity. They compress, distort, and exaggerate. Someone who stops there ends up with a caricature of reality, bold claims with none of the fine print. That shallow intake bleeds into conversation, where they parrot slogans instead of ideas and recycle outrage instead of insight. Information overload isn't the problem here. The problem is stopping at the surface. Intelligence requires critical thinking, the ability to go past the headline, weigh evidence, compare perspectives, and make sense of context. Without that step, people mistake recognition for knowledge, and thought stays superficial and hollow. No sense of humor. Everyone knows a Karen who can turn a harmless joke into a full-blown incident report. Sarcasm? Offensive. Satire? Disrespectful. A playful jab among friends? Grounds for a lecture about professionalism. It's not that humor flies over their heads. It lands right on them, and they immediately call the manager. This habit ties into cognitive flexibility and theory of mind, the mental skills that let you hold two meanings at once, recognize when someone's play acting, and see another person's perspective. Understanding most jokes requires detecting an incongruity, what's expected versus what's said, and then mentally resolving it. Research in humor and cognition repeatedly finds that people who appreciate complex, ironic humor also score higher on verbal reasoning and perspective-taking measures. When someone consistently misses those cues or responds with anger, it often reflects a rigidity in processing. Literal, single-track, and quick to take offense, rather than exploring possible meanings. Humor works as a kind of stress test for intelligence. If you can catch the layers of meaning, you can probably handle complex ideas too. People who never laugh and go straight to anger show the opposite pattern: rigid, narrow, and quick to miss the bigger picture. It's not comedy they're rejecting, it's the mental flexibility that comedy demands. All talk, no action. Some people can talk a big game about everything they're going to do, and then never lift a finger. They can outline grand plans, promise the moon, and deliver a 2-hour speech on their next impressive venture, only for all of it to evaporate the moment action is required. It's a bit like those folks who buy running shoes and never take them out of the box. They love the idea of effort, but not the reality. Maybe they think if they just talk enough, they'll magically burn calories from all that verbal exercise. Psychologists describe this as the gap between intention and execution. Talking about goals can create the illusion of progress, because saying it out loud tricks the brain into feeling it's already underway. That's why people who only talk often overestimate what they've achieved. What marks intelligence isn't the promise of action, but the ability to deliver it. Smarter thinking means recognizing talk is cheap. Action is where intelligence cashes out. Arrogance without understanding. Bragging is often used to cover up a lack of real knowledge. You'll hear it when someone delivers sweeping opinions on politics they barely follow, or boast that a complex issue is just common sense. It's a way to sound certain while skipping the details. From there, it's a short step to mocking. Rather than asking questions, they use ridicule as a shield. It's easier to sneer at something you don't understand than to admit you're unsure. The deeper issue is that this habit shows a lack of intellectual humility. Studies in cognitive psychology have found that humility correlates with higher reasoning ability. It means being aware of what you don't know and staying open to new information. People who brag or mock instead of asking questions demonstrate the opposite. They close the door on learning. Instead of bragging, real intelligence shows up in curiosity, in asking questions, in knowing when to withhold judgment. You can tell the difference instantly. The person who fills silence with noise versus the one who pauses to think before speaking. Chronic sleep neglect. You can fake being fine on 4 hours of sleep for a day or two. Push it longer, and the cracks start to show. Reaction time slow, memory falters, even basic reasoning takes more effort. Psychologists have compared the cognitive effects of sleep deprivation to being mildly drunk. You may still function, but you don't function well. Research from the University of Pennsylvania found that people with 6 or less hours of sleep a night for 2 weeks performed as poorly on attention and reasoning tasks as those who went 2 straight nights without sleep. What's worse, most participants thought they were doing fine. They had no idea how impaired they'd become. It's crazy how some people brag about running on empty, as if exhaustion proves their ambition. In reality, it's the opposite. Sleep deprivation undercuts the very intelligence they're trying to project. Ego fragility. Some people treat every disagreement like it's a threat to their very existence. If they're wrong, they can't admit it. If something goes badly, they find someone to blame. The pattern is simple. When things go right, they take all the credit, and when things don't, suddenly it's someone else's fault. This habit goes deeper than arrogance. It's about fragility. A fragile ego can't handle the idea of being wrong, because being wrong feels like being lesser. That's why these people argue endlessly over trivial details, twist facts to fit their version of reality, or blame anyone else when things don't go as planned. Psychologists call this externalization, pushing responsibility outward so the ego doesn't take the hit. Intelligence depends on the ability to revise your view when reality proves you wrong. Fragile egos won't do that. They'd rather protect their pride than update their understanding. The result is a pattern of repeating the same mistakes, all while believing they're in the right. Rigid thinking. A software update rolls out and they complain the company ruined everything. The grocery store rearranges its aisles and they grumble that shopping is now impossible. Their partner suggests a new place to eat and they refuse before even hearing what's on the menu. However small the change, the reaction is the same: resistance at all costs. Psychologists link this to cognitive rigidity, or the inability to adjust when conditions change. Studies in problem solving show that flexible thinkers try new approaches when the old one fails, but rigid thinkers keep using the same broken strategy, expecting it to work differently. That isn't persistence, it's blindness to feedback. Intelligence relies on mental flexibility, the capacity to shift perspective, absorb new information, and see alternatives beyond the first idea. Without that flexibility, thinking stalls. Rigid minds don't just resist change, they shrink the range of what they can understand. Each refusal to adapt narrows their perspective further, leaving them stuck in place while the world moves on without them. Boredom, intolerance. Some people can't handle a single moment of boredom. The instant there's a lull, they reach for their phones, binge endless videos, or drown out silence with any distraction they can find. That constant need to fill the quiet shows they can't sit with their own thoughts for even a minute. Research suggests that the ability to tolerate boredom is tied to maintaining focus. If you can't handle a bit of boredom, you never give your mind the space to settle into real concentration. That means you get really good at jumping from one quick distraction to the next, and really bad at sustaining any deeper thought. True intelligence requires the ability to stay with a complex idea long enough to understand it. If you can't bear a moment of boredom, you never get that chance. Gut feeling bias. There are folks out there who trust their instincts so much that they'll happily toss out a mountain of evidence just because it doesn't feel right. They'll say things like, "I know what the numbers show, but I just have a gut feeling this is wrong," as if intuition is some magical trump card that beats actual data. In reality, leaning too hard on gut instinct can mean ignoring facts that don't fit a comfortable narrative. It's a bit like covering your ears because you don't like the song that's playing. Sure, it's cozier to go with what feels right, but it can lead to some pretty shaky decisions. Smart thinking isn't about having a perfect crystal ball. It's about being willing to adjust your viewpoint when the evidence says you should. People who rely solely on gut feelings might sound confident, but they're often just dodging the hard work of thinking critically. You've just taken a tour through the many sides of intelligence, from IQ scores to those odd little habits that secretly show how our brains work. Thanks for hanging out and diving into the weird and fascinating world of how we all think.